Wow. Okay. So you really weren't kidding about this Ethereum deep dive for 2024.
Buckle up, huh?
Yeah. This stuff is wild. We've got some intense technical charts to break down
Oh, yeah.
and get this. Trump's reelection and its potential impact on crypto? I mean, talk about a plot twist.
Yeah, it is pretty wild how a political event can, like, I don't know, just send shockwaves through a decentralized market like that.
Right. So much to unpack here. But before we get to Trump, let's start with the basics, right?
Sounds good to me.
Even with all the competition out there, Ethereum is still the big dog on the block.
Yeah, it's kind of like, still holding strong.
OG.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The OG of smart contracts and dApps. But it's got to be more than just, nostalgia at this point, right? What's keeping it ahead of the game?
Well, nostalgia probably plays a part, I'm sure. But there's substance, too.
Right.
For example, Ethereum 2.0 Phase 2 is rolling out with all these upgrades.
Oh, yeah, those upgrades? Like, what specifically? Well, there's sharding, which is going to, directly tackle those speed and cost issues that people have been, complaining about.
So faster transactions, lower fees, music to everyone's ears. Are those layer 2 solutions like Arbitrum helping with that too?
Oh, absolutely. They're helping to, like, scale things up massively. I always kind of think of it like, it's like building a high-speed rail system.
Right.
But on top of an already solid foundation. That foundation, the bedrock, that's still Ethereum's main chain. So DeFi, NFTs, all that good stuff, it's still all built on that.
Gotcha. So the foundation's getting stronger, and then they're adding like this whole new layer of innovation on top of it. Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly.
But now for that curveball we talked about earlier.
The Trump thing.
Trump, he's back in the White House. And the sources you sent over are saying this could actually be good news for crypto. Seriously.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting, right? At first glance, I get why you'd be skeptical. Seems counterintuitive, but let's, zoom out a bit. Look at the bigger picture. Trump, he's all about deregulation. And less regulation could mean, a much friendlier environment for all those blockchain startups.
Okay, yeah, less red tape, more freedom to move fast and innovate. That does make sense for a sector like crypto, which is, moving at warp speed already.
Exactly. And then there's the dollar.
What about it?
Well, with all this, all this global tension going on, the government spending, some investors are starting to get a little nervous about the dollar's stability, right? So they're looking for other options. They want to hedge, something decentralized, deflationary. And, well, that's where Ethereum comes in.
Wait, so you're saying Trump's policies, whether he means to or not, are kind of pushing people towards crypto?
Yeah, that's one way to read it. And don't forget, he's always talking about American dominance in tech, right? Well, if his administration starts throwing its weight behind blockchain, well, that could really boost Ethereum projects on a global scale. It's a real possibility.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the connections here.
Good.
But you know me, I'm itching to see what the charts are saying. Time to get into the, the nitty-gritty of the price analysis.
All right, let's do it. We'll focus on the Ethereum USDT weekly chart, okay? It gives us a good overall view of the trend.
Perfect. So where are we at right now, price-wise? Where is Ethereum sitting?
Right now, Ethereum's at $3,617.53. And the interesting thing is, we've been seeing this steady climb, but it keeps running into these, these key resistance levels.
Okay, so these resistance levels, for those who don't know, help me out. What are we talking about? Like price ceilings, those points that are tough to break through?
Exactly. And the first one we got to watch, it's at $3,719.
Got it.
It's the 50% Fibonacci retracement level.
Whoa. Fibonacci retracement. That sounds kind of complex.
It's not as bad as it sounds, honestly. Think of it this way. You connect the highest and lowest points of a recent price move. Okay? So Fibonacci retracement levels, what they do is they divide that line into specific percentages. 23.6%, 38.2%, 50%, 61.8%, and so on. Traders use these levels to sort of, to try and predict where price reversals might happen.
Oh, so it's like you're getting a sneak peek into the minds of the traders, these Fibonacci levels. Are they like, I don't know, cheat codes for understanding how they might react?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
They help us anticipate those big price swings.
Cool, very cool. So for Ethereum right now, you said the key levels are, was it $3,719, the 50% retracement,
Right.
and then $4,100, the golden pocket, which is the 61.8% level.
Yep.
Okay, I got those numbers locked in. $3,719 and $4,100. So if we blast through those, is that when we start talking, moon mission?
Well, breaking above $4,100, yeah, that'd be a pretty strong sign that the bulls are in control. From there, I'd say the next target we'd be looking at $4,642, which lines up with that 78.6% Fibonacci level we talked about. And then, beyond that, the real prize, that'd be breaking above $5,342.
Uh-huh.
That's a long-term resistance level. If we can crack that, well, that could open the door to $7,000, maybe even higher.
$7,000 Ethereum. Man, that would be a headline. But, let's be realistic for a second. What about the downside? Where could things go wrong? Is there a chance this whole thing goes south?
Right, of course, got to look at both sides. The closest print level we've got is $3,547. It's been like a springboard for these recent rallies.
Yeah.
So we'd want to see that hold if we're being optimistic.
But are these support levels really that, reliable? Because I've seen Ethereum crash through supposed support before.
No, that's a good point. You're right. No support or resistance is unbreakable. It's more like, guidelines, really. That said, there's more substantial support further down, around $3,019.
Right.
That lines up with the 38.2% fib level, and it's, historically, it's been a pretty strong accumulation zone. And then if things really hit the fan, there's deeper support at $2,868, the 23.6% retracement.
Okay, so there are, a few potential safety nets on the way down, but it sounds like overall things are looking pretty bullish.
Yeah, I'd say so. We've got the technicals lining up nicely, plus all those fundamental factors we talked about earlier, like those upgrades to the network and, the possible impact of Trump's policies. It all adds up.
So it's not just hype. This is a real sustained upward movement you're seeing.
Exactly. And then there's this other thing. It's really adding fuel to the fire. The institutional FOMO.
Institutional FOMO, what's that all about?
These big players,
Yeah.
like BlackRock, Fidelity, they're pouring money into Ethereum. They're seeing the potential. They don't want to be left behind.
Yeah, that's exciting. But are we missing anything? Are there any warning signs? What could derail this bull run?
Well, that's a really good question, and it leads us to something really important. We've talked about the charts, the tech, the whole political scene, but what about those things we just can't predict?
You mean like those black swan events?
Yeah, exactly. They're always lurking, right?
Yeah.
And we can't know what they'll be, but we have to acknowledge that they could happen and they could shake things up no matter how good things seem right now.
So even though the charts are looking pretty, can't get complacent, gotta stay grounded, remember there are risks.
Right, 100%. Being aware of both sides, the opportunities and the risks, that's key. But for now, let's switch gears a bit.
Okay.
We've covered the technical indicators, talked about some of the risks. There's this whole other layer I want to dive into, the psychology of it all. The psychological factors at play here.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were going to tell us about that. Getting into the minds of the traders, huh? This is where it gets really interesting.
It does, because, the charts, the fundamentals, they give us a framework, but it's people who drive the markets, human behavior. Remember that question I asked earlier about fear and greed?
Yeah, those primal emotions. How do those play out in the Ethereum market? I'm all ears.
Well, just imagine this, okay? Ethereum's price is climbing, breaking through resistance, hitting the headlines. Now, the traders who bought in early, they're seeing their profits grow. They're getting excited.
Right.
Maybe even, a little euphoric. Greed kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
They get more confident, maybe a little reckless, start chasing those gains.
Uh-huh. I see where this is going.
And that's when you get FOMO, fear of missing out. Others see the price going up and they jump in, and that just pushes the price higher.
So greed creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Makes sense, actually.
Right. But then you have the opposite effect, too.
Oh, right, the fear.
Exactly. So let's say Ethereum hits a roadblock. Maybe there's some regulatory news, a security breach, or just bad news about crypto in general. Suddenly, that euphoria, it turns into doubt, then fear. The traders who are riding high, they start to worry. They want to sell, protect their profits, and all that selling pressure can lead to, a sudden price drop, sometimes even a full-blown panic.
Wow, it's like this crazy tug-of-war between fear and greed pulling the market back and forth.
Exactly. And understanding that dynamic, it's crucial. It's not just about the charts, it's about understanding human behavior. So think about it. Right now, with Ethereum, are we seeing fear or are we seeing greed? We'll dive into that more next time.
This is fascinating. I'm already looking forward to our next conversation.
Me too. All right, so you ready to dig into some of those technical indicators?
Yeah, hit me with those signals, but you know me.
Big picture guy.
Big picture. Keep it clear, keep it concise. That's how I like it.
Of course. Think of these technical indicators, right? Like a way to gauge the market's mood. They can help us see those shifts in momentum, anticipate those price moves.
Okay, yeah, so, like, are we talking about moving averages and stuff? I always see those on the charts, but I'm never quite sure, what they're actually telling me.
Yeah, you're on the right track. Moving averages, they can definitely help us identify trends. For example, if you look at the Ethereum USDT weekly chart, right? The 20-week moving average just crossed above the 50-week.
Mhm.
And that, classic sign, bulls are gaining control.
Okay, so the short-term momentum is, like, overtaking the long-term trend. I mean, that seems to fit with the whole, bullish sentiment we've been talking about.
Exactly. And then,
Yeah.
there's the RSI,
All right, so
Relative Strength Index. Tells us if the market's getting overheated, if there's still room to run.
oh, right, RSI. I always get those acronyms mixed up. Remind me, what's that one measuring again?
So the RSI, think of it as a gauge of, like how intensely the price has been moving. Right now, Ethereum's RSI, it's hovering around 60, which suggests, healthy upward momentum, but no real warning signs that things are getting too crazy just yet.
So we're not in, like, bubble territory or anything?
Not yet, no. The RSI suggests the bulls still have, some gas in the tank.
Okay.
And then there's one more indicator I want to mention, the MACD,
MACD. What's that stand for again?
Moving Average Convergence, Divergence. Sounds complicated, but all we're really looking for is that bullish crossover, where the MACD line crosses above the signal line.
Right.
And guess what?
Yeah.
We just had one on the Ethereum chart.
Interesting. Okay, so all these indicators seem to be pointing towards, a potential breakout. But, I keep thinking about something you said in the first part of this deep dive
Oh, yeah.
about those external factors, the things that could, throw a wrench in the whole thing.
The things we can't predict.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've been doing some thinking about that,
Good, good.
What about regulation, for example? We talked about how Trump's, pro-business approach could be good for crypto. But what if that changes? What if the regulators suddenly crack down? Could that, derail everything?
Yeah, you're right to be thinking about that. Regulation, it's tricky. I mean, if it's clear and supportive, it can help the industry grow. But if they get too heavy-handed, yeah, they could stifle innovation, spook investors, definitely.
And then there's the whole environmental impact debate. I mean, Ethereum's moved to proof of stake, so it's using less energy. But there are still people who are concerned about blockchain's carbon footprint, right?
Absolutely, that's a real concern. And it's something the whole crypto community needs to take seriously for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, regulation, the environment, those are two big ones. But what about, the things we can't even imagine? Those black swan events you were talking about.
Always a possibility, right? A major hack, a global crisis, some geopolitical event we don't see coming. Those are the wild cards.
Oh.
And they could impact Ethereum, regardless of the fundamentals, regardless of the technical analysis.
So even if the charts look amazing, we got to stay grounded. Remember the risks.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, good. So we've covered the technical indicators, talked about some of the risks, the external factors, the black swan stuff. But now I want to get back to, that psychology piece, the human element.
Right. Because in the end, it's all about psychology.
So let's dive into that. Okay, so let's get back to this whole psychology of the market thing. You left us hanging with that, that question about fear and greed. How do those actually play out when we're talking about, like, the Ethereum market specifically?
Okay, well, imagine, Ethereum's price is just surging, breaking through those resistance levels, hitting new highs, making headlines, all that. People are getting excited, right?
Yeah.
They see others making money, and nobody wants to be left out. And that's where that, that FOMO kicks in, the fear of missing out.
Right. So everyone piles in, pushing the price up even more. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but driven by greed.
Exactly. But then, there's the flip side, too.
When it all comes crashing down.
Yeah. So let's say, I don't know, some bad news hits, maybe some regulation, a security breach, something like that. Suddenly, all that euphoria, it turns into doubt and then fear.
Yeah.
And people panic, they sell, and the price can really plummet. It's like it can feel like a roller coaster, driven by our most basic instincts.
This makes me think about those support levels we talked about earlier. Are those are those almost like psychological barriers, like places where that fear might kick in and trigger a sell-off?
That's a really interesting point. Support and resistance levels, they're partly technical, yeah, but they are definitely influenced by psychology too. Traders see those levels and they react, and that often ends up reinforcing those price points.
Fascinating. Okay, so how do we as investors, how do we navigate this? I mean, how do we make smart decisions when it feels like everyone else is losing their minds?
The key is, you got to stay grounded.
Yeah.
Stick to your plan. Don't get swept up in the hype. And don't panic when things get a little bumpy, because they will.
Oh. It's easier said than done, though, right? When you see those charts going wild, it's hard not to, get caught up in the excitement or the fear.
Oh, absolutely. That's why it's so important to have a strategy. Manage your risk. Decide how much you're willing to invest, set your stop losses, and, don't try to chase those crazy parabolic moves,
Yeah.
because that's when things can really go wrong.
So discipline, rationality, even when everyone else is acting emotionally.
Exactly. Remember, the market rewards those who can keep a cool head. And with Ethereum, all the potential it has, but also all the risks, that's more important than ever.
Well, I feel like we've really, covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. The technicals, the fundamentals, the big picture, even gotten into the psychology of it all. It's been a wild ride. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
I just say this, knowledge is power, right?
Mm.
The more you understand the forces that drive the markets, the better prepared you'll be. Stay curious, keep learning, keep asking questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener, and I feel, so much more equipped to handle, the exciting, sometimes crazy world of Ethereum. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.